there are basically two ways to look at religion. In an inclusive way or an exclusive way. And I think what the chapel represents is a kind of congregation that looks at the distinctives that we have in the religious world. And there are distinctives. I mean, there are differences. But chooses to focus not on the distinctives, but on the things that bind us together. So we could say that we would choose to draw a circle of love around people, to include as many people as possible in the family of God. As opposed to drawing a circle around people to insulate ourselves and keep those who are different outside of the family. And what happens when you do this, when you draw the circle to exclude people, is you keep drawing it tighter and tighter and tighter and excluding more and more people, that the circle becomes a little dot. And then what you're able to say is only those who fit in my little dot of orthodoxy, of right belief, are really true believers. And we do this in the Christian, we've done this in the Christian church for centuries. Spliced it and diced it and defined it and refined it. So now we have 200 brands of Southern Baptist. I mean, it's crazy. I'm not so much anymore in my old age here concerned about orthodoxy. I mean, you know, I've studied right belief, orthodoxy my whole life. I'm more concerned about orthopraxy, right practice. And by orthopraxy, I define that in terms of the love ethic. The love ethic. And I have the perfect orthopractic mantra for you. You probably never heard this before. Well, I'll write it down and put it somewhere. Love is the doctrine of this church. Don't you love that? That's a way of drawing the circle as big as we can draw it. Extending the table as much as we can extend it. Recognizing, acknowledging the differences. Affirming our own uniqueness. Our own distinctives. I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not ashamed to say, for me, Christ is my glorious distinction. That's my heart and soul, my history, my heritage. But that doesn't mean that I have to look in a condescending way about somebody else's glorious distinctive. It's just a different way of doing religion. A new way of doing a religion for a new world. A new Christianity for a new world. Realizing that in these times, none of us are insulated from anyone else. We're all interconnected. And I think one thing that the global financial crisis has shown us is that none of us live in isolation from anyone anymore. A new spirituality for a new world. A circle instead of a dot. And secondly, another model or metaphor for doing religion in our new world. A bridge instead of a moat. We saw some beautiful castles and fortresses in Spain, and many of them surrounded by moats. I love moats. I always have since I was a little boy. I don't know. There is something about boys that, you know, they love this stuff. It's maybe a little sexist, but girls don't seem to be into it as much. But boys, I love moats. I love the pots of boiling oil that they threw over the wall as the castles were being invaded. I love the giant rock throwers. I love the moving ramparts, all of that stuff. I loved it. Loved the moats. So it's kind of exciting. And moats are intended to keep people out of the castle. Any outsider who would threaten the sanctity, the safety of the kingdom, of the castle. That's what moats are for. Now, I don't know of any churches that have moats. Maybe you do. But I know of churches that have this fortress mentality, and their whole modus operandi is to keep outsiders and people who are different or threatening away from them. I saw that in the cathedrals. I mean, unbelievable, these huge metal doors with iron gates. You know, that was a model of religion in the Middle Ages. So like I said, I don't know of any churches that have moats, but we kind of have a moat here, don't we? We have on one or two sides, well, one side anyway, a canal. But I do know churches that have other invisible barriers. And a lot of them. I remember my first church, I mentioned this before. The congregation was in a changing neighborhood in the Bay Area, Hayward, San Francisco Bay Area. So at some point, somebody got this great idea to construct a wrought iron fence around the whole property, 2 acres. And our caretaker, our custodian, Clarence, God bless his soul, he's been gone a long time, he made sure that that gate was always locked unless somebody was coming in or going out. And so we existed pretty peacefully within the confines of our little gate, but the neighborhood was getting worse. And I remember one Sunday evening, we were having a service, and in those days in the evangelical church, you always had 2 services on Sunday, Sunday morning and Sunday evening. And I cringe at the idea of preparing 2 sermons on Sunday anymore, but that's what I did for years. So we were having our Sunday evening service, and a gang fight broke out in the parking lot, right in the parking lot. You know, and it's kind of hard to sing Nearer My God to Thee when you have, you know, all this ruckus out in the parking lot. So I just stopped right in the middle of the thing and I said, we got to do something about this. We just can't, you know, I didn't know any better in those days. You know, I do stuff like this. We just can't, you know, keep on doing business as usual when the whole neighborhood's going to hell. And so after that, we started trying to connect a little bit with the community. And we actually went out and started knocking on doors and asking people how we could help them. And I don't know if we did any good. Very difficult, because we were dealing with people that quite often took more than what they gave back to the church. And one thing you find with churches is they don't like to go after people who take more than they give. They want good, contributing, gifted members. So it was a real commitment to go after these people and to ask them, what do you need? Maybe we could do that around here. I mean, I think that'd be a great idea, to go out in our community and start knocking on people's doors and with a little survey. How can I help? What are your needs? Not what can you give to my congregation, but what can we give to you? That's a real act of faith. And it starts to tear down those barriers, those invisible barriers that we have in church. And they're here in every congregation. I'm telling you, even though we may be very inviting and friendly and receptive like we are here, do you know how scary it is for someone who's never been in church, for an outsider to make their way through those doors on Sunday morning?